Good morning. It is 6:40 a.m. on Sunday, July, November 25th, 2018. I am Christiana Ellis and I just got up. This is 5 more minutes. I went to bed at about 12:30 and woke up at about 6:30, which I think is the closest to a regular schedule for sleep so far. I'm probably going to need to nap today, but I'm getting there, getting back adjusted. It's dark and rainy outside still right now. Dark makes sense. Rainy is, you know, certainly within the realm of possible weathers, but just has kind of a cool, ominous mood outside. But today is Sunday, and that means I'm continuing my rewatch of Gravity Falls with episode 4 from season 1, The Hand That Rocks the Mabel. And with this episode, we introduce what will be an ongoing series antagonist in Gideon Gleeful, and also start to kick in. This is our first new wrinkle in the overall non-episodic mystery that we've really had since the end of the first episode. When we reveal at the very end of this one that Gideon has the number 2 journal, compared to the number 3 one that Dipper found, which, there's an ongoing thing there. But I think this episode is a really strong one also. And one of the things that I think is really interesting about it is that, even for an episode that came out in 2012, I think it was on kind of the leading edge of interrogating the whole friend zone trope and pointing it out to be actually not what it's frequently depicted as in media. And so to have it from the girl's perspective of having it be unwanted attention and turning what could have been a friendship into something else in the end, and ultimately it wouldn't have worked out as a friendship anyway because the whole thing was fraudulent, right? Gideon really did have a crush on her and didn't really ever want to be friends, but he was also revealed as not a very nice guy, and so the whole effort was really just an attempt to deceive Mabel. And Gideon, not a good guy. No, not sympathetic. In any event, we begin the episode with the kids watching TV, and they see a commercial for the Tent of Telepathy. It's interesting that there was actually a newspaper ad or magazine ad for that in one of the earlier episodes, but they learn, there's a psychic named Gideon Gleeful, and they want to go see him. Grunkle Stan forbids it. No, because Gideon has only caused him trouble. We don't really understand why, but the kids decide to go anyway. So we see, the big reveal is that Gideon is actually like a little kid who is, got that super southern polite sort of thing going, bolo tie, big hair, plays it being super cute, but is kind of grating. I think, intended to be like to us, the viewer. We're supposed to be more in Dipper's shoes than anyone else, I think, there, which is to say, this guy's probably fake, and I don't know, this whole thing is a little bit saccharine. And in the meantime, he is, Dipper's going into this with this whole perspective of, well, he's almost certainly a fake, right? So let's figure out how he's doing it. But also there's the moment midway through where Gideon he asks everybody to stand up and places his hand on his bolo tie, which we later realize is actually this magic amulet, right? And so the implication being he used his magic powers to make everyone stand up. which has additional relevance later. But, so we have just the briefest hint in this first one that there's something more than meets the eye going on. But for the most part, what we see him do is make a lot of sort of psychic predictions that could have easily been picked up just from being observant, like the way that a lot of these psychics actually operate. These show psychics, right? And it's interesting because it's clear that most of the audience is just completely enamored and thrilled and seem to believe that the powers are real. Dipper comes out saying he's a bigger fraud than Grunkle Stan, and in a kind of bemused way. But Mabel, interestingly enough, likes him, but for like a completely different reason, which is again something that's always kind of interesting about Mabel, is that her reactions to things are always a little bit off of what you might expect. But in any event, she thinks he's super cute, and so then when he shows up, Gideon shows up at the Mystery Shack which is still got the S knocked crooked. He wants, to ask if she wants to go to the dressing room to do makeovers, which they do, and she enjoys that. So, like, this initial interaction between them is, he's trying to impress her, but it's also something totally different. Like, her initiation to this whole thing is not, in a romantic context, right? And in any event, Mabel expresses to Dipper that she's been looking for someone to be able to do girly stuff with, because Dipper and Seuss get to do boy stuff all the time. At which point we get a key example of that, where they're going to go take a whole pack of hot dogs and watch them explode in the microwave one at a time, and then they walk off chanting one at a time, which is just such a weird detail there. like that's somehow the exciting part of that whole experience. Anyway, but Mabel got her Wolverine nails and makeup, and so she is enjoying the idea of having this friend / little sister, is how she describes Gideon at first. But at that point, as they start getting into more of a relationship, though, what we have is this moment where it starts to turn a little bit. Gideon being a little creepy, but also just saying, I want to go on a date, a real date, and Mabel's kind of visibly not into it and a little uncomfortable and a little weirded out, but she does agree. One interesting detail, the episode does not hit us over the head with this, because and so it's you have to read between the lines a little bit. But just as before in the tent, when he made everybody stand up, he put his hand on his bolo tie. He does the same thing when he asks her on one date, and so she agrees. And so the implication there is that he maybe made her agree. Now, they don't hit that very hard, but for sure, he's already being a little bit weird about it. She's not super into it, but she does agree. And then, so here's where we kick into a whole sequence where, he's trying to impress her. She's really not into it, and she's not interested in that way. But she has got herself stuck in this position of, it's the flip side of the coin of the whole friend zone idea, which is that she is not romantically interested, but he is forcing her into a position where she has to either lead him on or hurt his feelings, and she is resisting doing either. But unfortunately, he's forcing the issue in a way that makes her have to do one or the other. And so for a while she struggles with it, can't make up her mind um, or rather, it's not that she can't make up her mind. Her mind is made up that she does not want to keep going on dates with him, but she doesn't want to hurt his feelings. And again, with this like minor implication that maybe he is using magic on her. But certainly, I think all of us can understand that when Dipper offers to do the breaking up on her behalf, that's not ideal. But of course, I mean, I think in real world circumstances, there's always, more concerns. These things are complex. So in general, it's probably not for the best because, of course, Gideon interprets that as Dipper trying to come between them when, that's not how Mabel really feels. And of course, that turns ugly. I think, let me briefly comment in the meantime on the side plot of Grunkle Stan hates Gideon because he causes him trouble for the business, but then when there's this suggestion that, oh, what if Gideon and Mabel were a couple? The two families could blend their various tourist trap businesses and make a lot of money. And that, of course, changes Grunkle Stan's whole perspective on everything. I really like that we have Stephen Root as the voice actor for Gideon's dad, just because I like Stephen Root. I think he's a funny guy. And so that whole plot line that then turns. And it's interesting, too, that Gideon's father is depicted as someone who's very confident and authoritative and charismatic from like a business perspective, but also clearly in sort of a trying to like he's clearly afraid of Gideon, who has magic powers for one, but also like it's a strange, weird thing, like where he seems to be completely at peace with the idea that his son is terrifying and just nope. Well, definitely got to do what he says. Sorry about that. And so yeah, Gideon is pretty revealed pretty quickly as way more horrible than we expected. Even, I mean, it's one thing to be a little bit creepy because he has a crush. I mean, that can happen. People can be creepy without meaning to be, and it doesn't necessarily make them a bad person. Gideon's definitely a bad person. And so, for sure, once Dipper tries to do this breakup, we've already at this point been clued into the idea that Gideon's got real magic powers. So Gideon ends up in actual physical danger with, Gideon threatening him. And this is, of course, where we get an excellent scene with Mabel asking Wendy for advice, and Wendy just gets lost in reminiscing about all the guys she's broken up with, including at the end is like, oh wait, I don't think I ever actually broke up with him. That's why he keeps calling me. And then her phone rings and she goes, ignore. And so it's like clearly Wendy not being a good role model in that regard. But completely separate from anything she actually has to say, Mabel comes to the conclusion that she should not have had Dipper try to break up with Gideon for her. And because certainly, on the wanting to give Gideon the benefit of the doubt, he deserves an honest breakup. And I think that is, of course, like it's the right lesson when the assumption that you're dealing with a normal person is a good one. In this case, turns out not. And I love that when she shows up and sees, sees what's going on, and like she uses some words to like let Gideon down easily a little bit, but just enough to she can snag the amulet away and basically say, turn completely. She's no longer sorry for hurting his feelings. It's like now, oh no, you're actually a terrible person, and I'm angry with you. How dare you attack my brother? And so it's a nice, team moment between them where Mabel gets to save them from falling by using the magic amulet and then smashing it. At which point Gideon, vows revenge on both of them. And this isn't the last you'll see of little old me. which is a nice it's a nice reference back to the song that he sang earlier, "Whittle Me." In any event, we so that's this nice. It's a good introduction to a villain character here. That where he starts off playing nice, and then but he can't sustain it because he's not actually nice. So he wants to control people, and he tries to manipulate Mabel, and she is at first, he is abusing her sense of politeness and empathy to take advantage of her. And eventually, once Mabel clues into that, just turns on him and is like, "No, this is terrible. You do not deserve my concern." And so we're left though with Gideon, still a member of a powerful family, still with the affection of most of the town, and apparently in the possession of the #2 journal. And who knows what that might mean as he makes little weird wooden voodoo doll sorts of things. Eek, creepy. In any event, it's a pretty strong episode, I think, especially, even as a standalone, but also, as a rewatch. This is the introduction of a character that we will certainly be seeing more of, and some good stuff. Yeah. In some ways, it's interesting because this episode, in some ways, is the first one that starts feeling more like what I remember the series as a whole to be. And that makes sense that a show is going to take a few episodes to kind of get in it's putting on the uniform, so to speak. In any event, that'll do it for this episode. Next week, we'll be talking about episode entitled "The Inconveniencing," which is one that I remember fondly. All right, we'll leave it there, and I'll talk to you all tomorrow for 5 more minutes.